Hey, what's going on? Eric Cortina here, Texas Barndominiums. Last week I showed you how we formed this foundation behind me. Today I'm going to show you how we pour the concrete. As you can see, everything's ready to go. We have 6 mil poly, which is the moisture barrier. And then we have our rebar in place. We have 3/8 rebar, 12 inches on center. In the beams we have 5/8 rebar, top and bottom, stirrups every 24 inches. And one of the most important things here is that you need to make sure that the rebar does not touch the dirt or the forms. We use brick instead of plastic chairs because it's a lot stronger. You can stand on it and it won't collapse like chairs would do. As you know, this is a 30x40 and we put 2 beams in there, cross beams. They're 24 inches deep, 1 foot wide. You can see the bricks, they're all in line. From all the years I've been in construction, this is a really way to tell if your rebar tires are good. You can see they go both ways. So we have a slight dilemma here. This is all sand and it's really soft sand. And obviously those concrete trucks are really heavy, so we're afraid we might get one stuck. So what we did this morning, we watered all the sand. Sand is a lot more stable when it's wet. And now we're gonna put down some plywood so we can roll the concrete truck over the plywood. That's a really good trick and it works every time. Once you distribute the weight, it's perfect. It'll work just fine. And heck, most of the time the plywood doesn't even break. So let me show you how we do that. All right, we'll see how this goes. We're about to drive the truck in here. We're probably going to try it without plywood first. Another thing that I did to prepare for this is I ordered a light load. This truck only has 7 yards. We're hoping the light load is going to allow us to come right in without having any problems. But again, we have the plywood and we're ready to go in case we do need it. Oh, okay. Looks like we got it there. For some reason, he drove in real slow. I told him not to do that, but sometimes these drivers will not listen. I know some of you might be wondering why I didn't get a pump. Pumps are even heavier than concrete trucks, and a lot of times you try to get a concrete pump in here, you'll get it stuck, and then you still have to get the concrete trucks backed up to the pump. I think the sand would have created a problem for us anyway, but I think as long as we keep watering and we keep bringing in light loads, we'll be just fine. One thing about rebar is classified in numbers such as 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. What they mean when they say number 3 rebar is how many 8s. So if they say number 3 rebar, that means 3/8 rebar. If they say number 6, that would be 6/8, which is technically 3/4 rebar. So number 8 is 1 inch, and so on and so forth. So this anchor plate is 1/2 inch plate, 8x8, and it has 3/4 inch legs welded to it. That gets embedded in the concrete, and then the pipes for the metal building get welded onto that plate, and then that's how the metal building is attached to the concrete. So anyway, this truck, we're about to get it out of the way. There's more on the way, so I think it's gonna work out just fine. Well, I hope anyway. We got this first truck poured out. It's about 40 degrees this morning, so I'm not worried about that concrete sitting right there. Typically in the summer, this would be a big no-no because it would sit up. But again, because it's 40 degrees, it's not a problem, and the other trucks are not far behind. All right, we got one out of here. All right, now that he's out of here, we're gonna level out that sand and water it, and we'll get the other truck in here. Truck number 2's here. We laid out the plywood, and we should be able to get him all the way up to the forms this time. All right, all we have to do is get him on the plywood. Once it gets on the plywood, we're good to go. And we're on the plywood. That trick works every time. So what they did is they just took one of those panel forms from the trailer, and they're adding 2x8s on each side. That's going to create a chute. Then we're just going to pour the concrete right on top of that, and it'll act like a slide, like you would find at a playground. The concrete company, they've been taking forever to bring the third truck. Call them up. Apparently they had a problem with their diesel delivery or diesel pumps. So I don't know what they're doing, so I'm gonna call them again, see what's going on. Hey, this is Eric Cortina. What's going on?
We got a truck 43 going out that way.
You got any more behind that one?
No, like I said, we're waiting on trucks to get here with fuel. All these trucks we got right now are without fuel, they head out that way.
All right, so
we're sending other trucks to go to other plants to go get fuel.
Okay. All right, so I'll call you as soon as I dump it out, but yeah, just get me some more as soon as you can, please.
That's what we're trying to do.
All right, thank you. Right, so you heard it. They're trying to get me some more trucks. Apparently we have one on the road, and as soon as it gets here, we'll dump it right out and send it back. So hopefully we can get this knocked out. The one thing that's helping us out a lot right now is the fact that it's still kind of cold out here. It's about 45 degrees, so that's slowing down the drying process, which is helping right now. But if this happened in the summer, it'd be really bad news. The third truck just showed up. So the way you screed concrete is, if you can tell, there's wooden stakes right in the middle of the slab. Those wooden stakes have a nail on them, which is level with the top of the forms. So what they do is they'll get a grade right there where they just did. They call that a grade, and they will use that as they will use that grade to guide themselves when they screed the concrete the other way. So in reality, there's nothing holding the screed board up other than their hands. So the guy over there screeding right on top of that grade, he needs to make sure that he holds that screed board perfectly flush with the top of that grade. He doesn't want to dig in, or he doesn't want to be too high, otherwise that concrete's not going to be flat. So it takes quite a bit of skill to do that. So the screed board that we're using, that's a 16-footer magnesium. Those things are, they remain straight. A lot of guys try to use a 2x4, but a 2x4 will bow under the load of the concrete, and once it bows, it'll also twist and it'll let concrete out from underneath it. So that's not a good idea. Now, I mean, you can use a 2x4 if it's for example, if you're doing a sidewalk or a small porch or something small that doesn't require a lot of force. But when you're trying to pour something, more substantial than that, then you need a good straight edge or a screed board, and these magnesium 16-footers are the way to go. This is what we use. In the meantime, these guys are making sure these forms are straight. The way they do this is they put a nail right here, 1.5 inches away from the form, and in line with a tin lug, and they do the same on the other side. And then all they have to do is eyeball it and make sure the edge of the concrete lines up with the string line. If it doesn't, they just beat those stakes down or that brace down like we talked about on the last video, and that pushes the forms in. Truck 437. All right, man. Yeah, I'm gonna need another one after that. Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, next truck is here. We're finally making some progress. All right, now they're finally coming, which is actually really good timing because it's starting to get warm. So that's gonna be the last truck for the slab, and then we're gonna get started on the driveway. The secret to screeding the ramp is you have to wait until the concrete is stiff. If you try to do it right away, it'll just all slump down. What do you have there, Chris?
I got lunchy.
Lunch. Yeah, you're gonna be the most popular guy here at the job site. Most at this point would assume that the concrete is level or flat, but that's not necessarily the case. This is called a bump cutter, and its main purpose is to cut bumps. You can see once you ran it, it's obvious that the concrete is not perfectly flat, so we're gonna make it flat. This is one tool that most concrete guys will not use, and to me it's one of the most important tools that you should use. So as you can see, the bump cutter is an absolute must. Next time you get some concrete poured, ask your concrete guy if they use a bump cutter. Chances are they're not even gonna know what it is, and if they do, they'll probably tell you that they don't need to use it. But just like you saw right now, even though concrete looks flat, it's not. In case you haven't figured it out by now, I like flat slabs. That's why we use the bump cutter, and that's also the reason that we're using a floating pan on the trowel machine. So the trowel machine has 4 blades, and typically they run those blades flat to flatten the slab, but they don't do as good a job as a floating pan. A floating pan looks like a pizza pan, and you put the trowel machine on top of it, and as it's turning, it's filling in the low spots and it's cutting the high spots. So you get a much flatter slab using a floating pan, and that's what we use on all of our slabs. So he's done floating the slab with the floating pan. For the floating pan, we use a 36-inch trowel machine. Now that he's ready to slick it off, we use a boring super trowel. The super trowel has 5 blades, and it's just an absolute killer machine for finishing off concrete. The boring has a variable speed clutch, so it'll spin the blades up to about 300 RPM. So that's an absolute beast of a machine right there. So you might be wondering, how does he get 300 RPM out of that trowel machine? Well, let's just say I may have modified the clutch, and I may have modified the governor on the engine, but that's for another video. As you can see, most of the stakes and braces have been removed. Those panel forms will be removed tomorrow, and then we will plaster the foundation and clean up the job site and go on to the next one. So it's 6 p.m. We're still here at the job site finishing concrete. We have about another hour to go and should be done. As you can tell, the sun is already setting, so it'll get dark here pretty quick, and the temperature's dropping, so it may slow it down even longer than an hour. But so overall, I think it went pretty good today. As you saw, we had some challenges, and you know, that just happens, seems like on every pour. But anyway, we got through it. So one word of advice is, if you notice when I talked to the dispatcher, even though they were not here on time, the trucks were not showing up, I was still courteous to the guy and respectful, because I'm sure there was a million people calling him about the same issue, and you know, me getting mad and stressing the guy out is not gonna help at all. So anyway, overall they showed up, delivered the mud, and now we're done, or almost anyway. So thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you next week. We are Texas Barndominiums.